Icicles keep things cold. What if it's like a fun like lunchbox that's locked musically, so like your coworkers can't steal your food, so you have to play a little melody on it, and then it'll open up for you.
That could be fun.
Sup, my Pample, it's Mike. Check, Mike.
Hey, it's Eugene.
Hey, it's Jonathan.
And today will be a bit more of a bittersweet episode than usual for two reasons. The first one, this is the season finale. So if y'all have enjoyed watching this podcast so far, do let us know in the comments, liking this podcast, just to let us know you've enjoyed this, and then there will be a season 2 if so. And the second reason is that, unfortunately, for different and various reasons, Eugene, for some family reasons, and Jonathan as well, will be having to take a step back from Pample Industries. So, that's understandable. I wish both of y'all the best. It's certainly been a pleasure to work with both of y'all.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a privilege to work with both of you, and I've really enjoyed what we've done here so far.
Yeah. And hopefully, as life evolves and turns around, y'all are welcome back anytime. So, yeah.
Well, I've been thinking about, I'm going to probably create my own company called Pample Industries.
Just darn it. No.
And then you probably create Stark Industries, and there you go.
Our nemesis, Pample Industries.
I think Pimple Industries has a nice ring to it.
Grumple Industries.
Stromple. There you go. There you go.
The branding might leave to be desired, but we'll leave this for a season 2.
Yeah.
Well, for today, I was thinking of picking a topic that would be in line with sort of our last episode of the season. And one topic that came to mind is essentially, what if we're building for the wrong future? A bit of a heavy title, I know, but I think that'd be an interesting one to explore, see, with any startup, you kind of have to pick a direction to go into. And I think that's a very valid question to ask, and an important one to maybe end the season 1 on. So with that, I was thinking initially with that question, can efficiency and depth coexist, or do you really have to pick one of the two?
I think they sort of exist in a way on a sliding scale from one another. There are ways that you can preserve as much depth as possible while increasing efficiency. But I think ultimately efficiency comes down to cutting things out. It's not about doing work faster, it's about doing less work. So you have to make value calls on what's worth leaving behind and what's worth keeping. Like if you're analyzing a technical something, you'll have to say, well, which aspects of the system are worth caring about and which ones could be negligible or ignored. And then you get like a simpler model that you analyze. And maybe for some companies, the answer to that is, well, who cares about the environmental impact of the fuel? Or maybe it's a technical consideration, like, oh, we don't need to do slosh analysis or something. They might, to be more efficient, oftentimes you need to leave things behind. So I think that if you're not careful, they're diametrically opposed. But if you have a deep understanding of what's going on and what factors are most important, then it's possible to preserve as much depth as possible while reducing the unnecessary things.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. There is, to some extent, I think you alluded to it, a caveat where if you reward speed overly so, it can lead to some shallow thinking, essentially maybe cutting some corners on things you should have done. But inversely, I'll kind of tie it even to the Pample experience of bootstrapping. If you're doing that, you kind of have to be efficient and move fast, but at the same time, the way you move has to be meaningful. Any decision you take, whether it's a product direction or an expenditure or hire, really anything, just because being resource constrained, all these decisions have to have some kind of meaning and efficiency simultaneously in order to not just be chasing growth, but to be a little more strategic about it.
Yeah. I just want to kind of bounce off what Jonathan was saying just earlier about, companies not feeling like they owe it to people to think about extra steps. Like, because I can totally see the argument for, like, to your example, Jonathan, about some companies be like, oh, why should I care about the environmental impacts of this fuel or whatever the system I'm creating? And I think it's fair. I mean, for some people, like some companies, they're like, I'm not being paid to care for the public and how the community feels about whatever I'm doing. I'm just here to make my product and just sell it to people. So I think that's totally like something I could understand why people would feel that way. So I think for some companies, it really comes down to like I guess just their genuine like heart. And I do believe there is a bit of like social responsibility that all companies should execute. And I think even more so when you are if you are a company with a product that can affect more and more people, like the more people you impact, the more responsibility you should take upon yourself. As Uncle Ben would probably say, with great power comes great responsibility. And you guys were kind of talking about this question, and there's a lot of good points. I think for me, I was kind of interpreting, unlike a slider, I think for me, I was kind of trying to think of like just a plot where maybe one axis is like convenience and the other being meaning. And I was trying just interpreting this question as like, oh, are we trying, as we as a company, as Pample, are we trying to create products to just get whatever we need, get whatever capital resources we need, rather than instead of trying to actually solve people's problems, like deep rooted problems. And I think you could be on like you could be a point that's like on near one side of the axis where it's like convenience. You're just optimizing purely for convenience. You're just trying to make a quick buck. You're trying to make a product that's just a part of the fad, and you're just trying to maybe reap off of people's problems without actually trying to solve the issue. First thing that comes to my mind would probably be just like maybe dating apps, maybe that kind of just, they capitalize on the human need for connection, but sometimes they don't actually try to do anything about it. Maybe it's a hot take, but maybe not. But then you can also be on the other side where maybe you are really striving for meaning, and ideally everyone wants to say that they're trying to do something that's going to be life-changing, it's going to change the world. But in reality, we've talked about in previous episodes, you need to have like a deliberate plan to get to that point of meaning. So I really do think there is a mixture of maybe you are just at a slope line of like one where you're kind of equal, you're equal in both parts, convenience, but as well as meaning as well, where you're trying to do something that's actually trying to help people, tying this back to the very first episode we had, but actually having a well thought out plan rather than just having some wild fantasy without any substance to it.
Yeah, I agree. There's an interesting balance between essentially building for something that has meaning that you still want to steward in the next 10 years versus also not being stuck in sort of a wishful land, I guess, where you're maybe not executing on that vision too. So you mentioned sort of building for people or for others. And one direction I'd like to kind of redirect us in is whether we would build for investors or for impact, or whether the two can even coexist today. And to keep on the spicy takes.
For sure.
Great question.
Going all out on this episode.
Well, I think for me, I guess the short answer would just be, as you mentioned before, we're bootstrapped, so we're not doing this for investors. So there's your answer. But I mean, I think another way to interpret it is like, are we just doing this for maybe even just trying to be liked by a lot of people? We're just doing things to just go with the flow of what trends are going, of the fads. Maybe people are wanting a product. Everyone's leaning to like, oh, AI is going to optimize your workflow or do this sort of magical thing for you. But maybe for us, it's like we're not just trying to just appease what people are looking for at the current moment, but genuinely as Pample Industries, the idea from the beginning was that we're trying to solve people's problems while also unlocking interesting futures for future generations and for other things as well. So we're not just looking at the here and now with what people are just kind of entertaining themselves around, like just simple like trinkets or anything, but really we're trying to look ahead, like maybe even 50 years down the line and be like, well, what would we really need in that time, maybe even 20 years, but I'm trying to look past what people are talking about just right now. So hopefully that was a cohesive answer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. And, sometimes VC incentives or the type of investment incentives can be a bit misaligned, and they can be, but it's just very difficult. And unless the cap table of your company reflects your values, being bootstrapped is not just something we do for the fun. Well, certainly not for the fun of it. Let's be clear. Yeah. But it is kind of a safeguard to make sure that the values, which I think is first and foremost what we put the most emphasis on, is what's being preserved. So sort of the morality first and then the rest second, which does make life a lot more tedious, but in some ways, but it has the merit of at least preserving that path.
I definitely agree with you that sometimes the short-term incentives that are, I guess, necessitated by having to repay investors, and obviously, like, it makes sense when you have investors, you need to do right by them and make sure that they get a return on their investment, can often poison the original principles that a company was founded on.
Yeah. I was going to just say for investors, you just got to, for some people, they just have to remind themselves what the job of investor is. They put in money, but they want to get more money out. If the investors really believed in the mission of the company, then they should just be an employee or something.
Or donate.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah. But
we do take donations.
I think so long as the impact aligns with the investors' interest and lines their pockets, then they're all fine and dandy. But really, at the end of the day, it's like they want to walk away coming out, better for it financially wise, whether you are aligned with the impact or not. If you are so happy to align with the impact, that's great. Everyone walks away happy, but at the end, it's really themselves that they're looking for. So really, the company kind of gets burnt in the process in that kind of situation.
It is a business transaction. I think it's okay to be honest with that. And like you said, it can happen that you're aligned, and it's not the most extreme rarity. It can happen. The issue is more when push comes to shove. You have competing priorities on when you exit and how you exit and what state you might leave the company in. Yeah. Or what priority you might direct them towards as the person bringing in the money and the capital.
I think it's also possible that depending on the time, if like there's a really critical window to make an impact, then sometimes taking investors can't be the right move because it allows you to strike like at a very specific time to solve a problem. But oftentimes it seems like just looking out into the industry that some companies will take on investors just to stay afloat rather than to like pounce on an opportunity that is short-lived.
Absolutely. And I think that's also okay to kind of have, you don't have to bootstrap necessarily forever and reject all investors. To your point, for example, say Series A, where maybe you want to ramp up for manufacturing, where you've already established yourself, your values, the product perhaps, then, you can find an investor that's aligned with you, and then you've also de-risked the company a decent amount, and then it helps you move strategically to have the resources to get the shop floor you need or the machines you need to move strategically. So certainly it can make sense, I think, at some points. In the very early stage, certainly a proponent of bootstrapping because you can take that time to grow at the appropriate pace and form your own identity. But by all means, certainly, like as the company grows, there can be some strategic moments to accept external investments, essentially. And so maybe one last question then for this first segment would be, how differently do you build when you have a 50-year out vision? I think you mentioned that earlier, versus building 18 months out from now. Yeah. How does that impact your thought process, I guess?
I remember...
Or your approach to building.
Yeah, I think when you want to build something that makes money in 18 months, you look at what's made money in the last 18 months.
True.
And if you want to build something that makes money in 50 years, you look at what's been making money like every year for the past 50 years. I mean, that's part of it. You also need to be forward-thinking in a way, but you don't have to take that literally. It is important that you don't have to say, like 50 years ago, all the top 10 companies were oil. So that means in 50 years from now, all the top 10 companies will be oil. Yeah. But rather looking at like companies that have really endured, like what has perhaps allowed them to do so. And also not just like from a financial perspective, but look at like maybe other organizations that have done really well with maybe like nonprofits that have like stuck very well to their values or caused like change that you support. Like what principles have they held? Like how have they like managed conflicts,
Yeah. I think maybe another way I think of that is you do prioritize durability over a fad or virality of whatever the thing was in the last 18 months, because most likely you're not doing any crazy R&D to be able to put something out in 18 months and make money off of it. But you are creating with stewardship in mind, as opposed to when can you exit if you're really thinking 50 years out from now. And so that might take the form of a classic business that's been around for a while. It could be plumbing, oil, and gas. There's some trades that have been around for a while. But even if it is more R&D based, at least the mindset with which you go in is definitely geared towards creating a system that hopefully outlasts the founder. I think if you're thinking 50 years out, that's probably that's what would come to mind.
Both of you guys have really good points. I think the only thing I could really add, I think, is what you mentioned earlier, where if your goal is to benefit people 50 years compared to 18 months, like then you can then invest in creating things that does take up that amount of time. Like if you, things that you wanted to create for in 50 years from now, it cannot be feasibly done in 18 months. If you have that short timeline, you're really just pressured to create something that has a really quick turnaround. So like if it's like a software as a service or other things like that, some software product really is like the easiest thing I think that would be taken to market, unless you have something you've been prototyping like as a hardware product. But I mean, that's really kind of like the one thing I could say.
Yeah, and to your point, I think software is certainly the easier thing to roll out, which as part of our bootstrapping, certainly one of the ways we're taking. And shameless plug for Vibely, that is the product that we will be releasing soon in about a month. Yeah. But y'all should stay tuned for that one. We won't reveal it quite yet. And speaking of not revealing things quite yet, that's a good segue into our second segment, Thanks Mom, where we'll be ideating other ideas that are not vibe
Yeah.
that we've been working on.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll ask Mom and / Eugene / ChatGPT to give us 2 words for this last episode of the season.
Mm-hmm.
That we will ideate our best ideas yet.
Yeah. I'm just hovering over the enter button right now. Let's see. See what Mom has to come up with. It's thinking. Okay. Well, I guess the final prompt that we're going to think of is icicle piano.
A perfect ending.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Well,
All right.
we'll give ourselves 10 minutes, and then let's see what we come up with.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Good luck, everyone.
Icicle piano. All right. Icicle piano was kind of a tough one for this last one, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, we'll make do.
Well, maybe this piano could help us end the podcast on a good note.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
Been waiting 25 episodes to press this one button.
Perfect.
Someone needs a terrible pun at some point because I have another one to press. All right. Well, in all fairness, as the MC for this one, I'll go first. So I have 4 probably equally terrible ideas. The first one was, for some reason, when I think icicle piano, I'm thinking of an art installation with, I can never remember for the life of me if it's stalactite or stalagmite, whichever one is pointing down. And as it drips, maybe it hits different like metal pans or something like that, ends up making sort of a musical note, a little bit of a natural orchestra. Maybe if you're smart about it, you can tweak the shape of the icicles so that they play at a certain cadence. I don't know what you do with that as a business plan other than maybe selling soundscapes, but
It could be like relaxing music on YouTube, like 3-hour minutes of water dripping onto pans.
drippy droppies or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first terrible idea, putting it out there.
Not bad. I mean, so because for me, I see the word icicle piano and naturally my mind goes to music. For some reason, my mind went to something completely different, but it's like I don't know if it comes from France, but like the idea where you have people with the glasses with the varying like lengths, and then you could like rub your finger on it, and it creates a different sound. I don't know if you
Like
guys ever tried
different
that.
water levels.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like,
And then you make really like pleasant sounds. And then for me, I was
like
thinking,
singing
well,
bowls or something.
and I was thinking, well, could I just smack like icicles to make sounds? And I was just doing some quick research thanks to Mom, and apparently icicles can vibrate when struck and behave like tuning forks in terms of acoustics. So I was thinking, well, if you have varying lengths of icicles, maybe you could do something where you just have like some sort of stick and hit it. But I thought what would be interesting would be if you have like a room where people are inside and then like they're listening to a musical performance where you have a normal orchestra with your violins and just cellos and woodwind instruments. You have someone with like this instrument of varying length icicles and they're hitting and doing whatever they want to do with it. What I thought would be interesting is that if the room is at a certain temperature, the ice starts melting. But then I would like to think all the ice with varying lengths melt at a certain rate. So then with all the icicles then like change in pitch. So then as the song goes on, this pitch changes. I don't know if this is like a physics question. If the length of the icicle decreases, I don't know if pitch decreases or not, but whatever happens to it,
increase.
Yeah. But then I wonder that would maybe create a very interesting musical experience. But that's something that
you
came
get
to my
some
mind.
microtonalities from the melting xylophone.
And some people might listen to this and be like, Eugene, that sounds like a stupid idea. But you have shorts of people just slapping water in a concert. I don't know if you guys ever seen that, but that's a thing, not to diss on them, but I'm like, hey, if you have something like that, I think something like this has merit. I think you can pull something off.
Interestingly, there is a cave where many of the stalagmites and stalactites have been tuned. So they've been basically like someone will take a Dremel and they've like made these stalagmites like very specific lengths so that they play like proper musical notes.
Gotcha. So, that wasn't too far off of an idea. Like, I think we're both onto something.
Yeah. Actually, I will just share my second idea because you talk about caves. The other idea was with caves, but what if you could use this ice of varying lengths to indicate routes in a dark, cold cave so you can't see? Maybe it's really dark, maybe your flashlight died. But then you can use the ice of varying lengths going from like wherever you are to the starting point. You can have them like with varying lengths or something where if it's like a damp cave and you have water dripping on the icicle or something, like the closer you are to wherever you want to be, like maybe the pitch goes up or something. And even if you're in a cave, like sound bounces off. So I was thinking maybe that could help you walk around like walls or something, because you could hear the sound, but like you wouldn't be able to immediately maybe tell if there's like a wall between you and that icicle or something. So maybe there might be some interesting navigation.
I wonder if
Maybe instead of a literal icicle, you could take that same concept of having like a beacon that you can identify by touch that like emits a sound like an icicle occasionally drips. I don't know.
Yeah, I was wondering if in a cave formation, if stalactite stalagmite length depends on how deep in the cave you are. I'm thinking, for example, in scuba diving, a common indicator. Let's say your compass doesn't work anymore. You can look at the lines in the sand, and the spacing as it gets closer takes you towards the beach. And if the spacing is further out, it takes you away from the beach. And you can use that as a sort of natural reading of where the beach might be. And then you can look at the angle of the lines because they're parallel to the beach or the shore usually. So you can use that to kind of orient yourself in a natural way. I wonder if there's some similar phenomenon where in a cave you can say, oh, stalactites are getting spacing is increasing or the length is changing, and so therefore that's an indication that I'm going towards an exit or maybe away from an exit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very interesting geology.
I'm not sure. Yeah, we need a geologist.
Spelunkology.
Spelunkologist.
Okay, as for my ideas, which are all equally underdeveloped, I also wrote a xylophone made of ice. It was the first thing I wrote on the paper. I followed that one up with the classic, like a piano, you play it on your, you play it, you can put out certain melodies and harmonies. And I was thinking, icicles keep things cold. What if it's like a fun, like, lunchbox that's locked musically? So, like, your coworkers can't steal your food. So you have to play a little melody on it, and then it'll open up for you.
That could be fun.
That could be fun, yeah, because it'd be just like a log pad instead of pressing, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Exactly.
it's 0, 0
It might
through
be
9.
more memorable for people with a musical background, or more fun to play a little tune before you eat.
You play a tune, but
lunch.
that sequence to open. That could actually be really cute. That could be a cute log combo for lunchbox.
And the this final invention is very much a product of my own personal preferences. But have you ever been to Costco to the cold section where that room is like cold? I'm like, I was like, what if there was a whole store like that?
Ooh.
So like you have produce that's at maximum freshness.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's like a giant ice box.
Exactly. And would people want to go there over a normal store? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, personally, I'm always drawn to the cold of the Costco section because I just like enjoy like the nice breeze in there. But I don't know if that would bring me to a store reliably.
Maybe it's a great Florida store or California summer store.
Oh, yeah,
to escape the
exactly.
heat. You can have it go in the
But
cold
maybe you
section.
could market it towards like, having like the freshest fruit that stays good for longer, or having like pre-chilled drinks, but like also the kind of the experience. Or maybe it's winter themed and it's heavily like,
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
maybe it's a seasonal thing that only comes out in the winter.
Yeah, that was certainly for fresh products too. That could be pretty interesting.
I was just thinking because Costco has like Costco for businesses as well. So like maybe you just have like, maybe I could be like a store where they just sell like frozen meats or something, where like a restaurant or someone could just come by and just pick whatever they need in bulk. I'm sure there's maybe other ways to go about it, but I don't know. Maybe there's a niche need where people could just walk in at a moment's notice. And maybe they're in a rush and they just walk into a store that has all the freshest ingredients. If it's, I don't know, if it's steak or bison or fish or something that's just like chilled and just ready for you. You can just take it, and by the time you take it back to your restaurant or something, maybe it's already thawed and like ready for you to just process and do things with it.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like you could just go to an ice box and do that.
And chili. Oh, sometimes I'm a bit suspicious of like where you have just like a tray cooler and then you have like meat on top of it, and perhaps like meat is stacked on top of other meat like at the grocery store, and I'm like, is it really staying cold on top?
Yeah, the
like,
top layer.
If it's not like a proper fridge and instead it's just like a sort of like open fridge.
I'll shamelessly admit I sometimes go for the second layer of whatever it is. Any frozen section, I'm like, nope, not the front object. Like, you got all that convective heating on you. Go one layer deep.
I was thinking that's like what my mom does all the time. Even just any general product, never grab the first thing, always go one back or something. I'm
But
like,
if you're in
why?
the icicle piano, and the reason this relates to pianos is because piano could also be pronounced piano, which is I think the Italian word for floor, like the floor of a building. So it'd be a floor that's like icicle cold.
Oh, that'd be cool. I like the pun. Hang on. It's as close of a chance as I got for this one.
Fair enough.
No, that's a good one. I think I had a very different direction for the remaining three. I had one, for some reason, I kept thinking of those missile battery vehicles that like open up and you have an array of missiles, except instead of expensive ammunition, you just pneumatically launch giant rods of ice instead. At least they make for cheap ammo, but other than being a cheap kinetic impactor with probably not too much damage, I don't know what that would do. But that's the imagery that came to mind with icicle piano
Yeah.
somehow.
I guess the only challenge is having the ice survive like the launch, so it doesn't just explode.
Well, if it
coming out.
explodes, that might
Yeah.
also be useful for certain like anti-drone applications. Maybe having it just shred
Yeah.
and become like shrapnel could.
Yeah, become a hail,
Yeah.
a storm
Oh,
of
yeah.
hail. Yeah.
You know, this could be very interesting, like in situ kind of defense. Like you just, if you're in a
Yeah.
cold environment, I don't know if you have to
Or
defend your
even if
end.
you just have a reliable source of power, you could freeze water
Mhm.
and like compress air.
Yeah. It's definitely in situ resource utilization meets defense needs, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
So
maybe not the
pretty
best
niche,
way.
Yeah.
But no, the other one, maybe going back to one of our former episodes, I think we maybe had some similar ideas that also involve ice. I was thinking of a machine that essentially layers a popsicle for you. You order like, I was thinking piano,
Oh,
multiple
that's a good
keys,
one.
multiple
Yeah.
notes,
Uh-huh.
tasting notes.
Mm.
And so I was thinking like you would punch in like up to, I don't know, say 10 flavors or something, and then you flash freeze your popsicle for you. And I guess you can have it stacked maybe vertically, or maybe
Yeah.
it could be a radial stacking of flavors. And so you just kind of customize your popsicle like that. Yeah.
Never been too much into popsicles. Maybe something like that might get me into popsicles more.
Maybe not yet, but thanks to this.
But once
this
it comes,
icicle
yeah,
piano.
put this one next to the turbo acorn.
yeah, yeah, two good products that come out of this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking the last idea I had was like a piano has keys. So could I use an icicle as a key to unlock something? And I was thinking like, I don't know, if an icicle can melt or grow at a certain length, maybe it could trigger something. I don't know, like going back to a cave, or even just maybe this could be some sort of way to like detect like the temperature in a room if you need it at a certain length or something. I don't know how sensitive an icicle is
Yeah.
to varying length, but it was just something that's coming to my mind. I was trying to think like, can I use an icicle to unlock something?
Well, you actually can.
Mhm.
The time to bring out the very niche, I guess, security or physical security knowledge I have, but you can actually use water to break locks.
Oh,
By like if you get a lock wet and then it freezes, the
expanding
ice will
it.
expand inside and it will break the internal components for like
Yeah.
some cheap locks. So this will happen like randomly to locks that get wet. But I think that like it has probably been used in the past for like malicious intent where someone has used water to break a lock in cold weather.
Yeah. Just kind of pour a glass of water, let it do its thing, and then walk away.
mm-hmm.
I do think by the end of this episode, Eugene's going to become an expert in resonant frequencies on icicles and rate of ice deposition.
I'll have
Ice
one.
regression rate.
Yeah, I'll never run out of things to talk about at a bar if someone talks about ice.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Give him one drink and he's off.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Now, the only other one I had out of that than the ones before was, those headphones you can put when you're swimming in a pool underwater? They kind of go like on your bone instead to transmit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking instead of everyone having to wear their own, can you just put like a speaker in the pool? I mean, sound's going to transfer well. So just have a little, like your JBL speakers, but one that's waterproof that you can just dump in the pool. So as everyone's doing their laps on a swimming team, you just all get the same music. Because I like on a team sport when you're all listening to
Oh,
music
for sure.
and all working out. So I don't know,
See,
maybe that's a thing.
I think that could also be really interesting if this is not really a thing for synchronized swimming as well, because especially if people's head are just
Oh,
underwater
yeah.
all
That
the
way they
time,
can hear,
because like
yeah.
they're dancing to the music anyways. I'm actually surprised that this might not be a thing already.
I would
feel
be
like they
shocked.
should.
Yeah, if they don't do it already, like
I always imagine sound as being distorted underwater.
Yeah.
I wonder what
Yeah.
would physically cause that and whether you could compensate for it.
I feel like you could modulate to compensate. Yeah, have a
Mhm.
really crisp sound so it doesn't sound like the muffled.
The like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, kind of like how noise canceling headphones kind of take account for some frequencies. I wonder if like a stat underwater speaker can have that kind
or
of
maybe
approach.
it, like pitches up or pitches down or like applies some sort of filtering to the
Yeah.
outgoing sound in order to correct the effect of the water.
Mhm.
Icicle machines, turbo acorns, and underwater speakers. That's it. We're pivoting Pample.
That's right. Yeah,
I think we put up a good fight for this season. Lots of good ideas on the podcast. So
yeah.
everyone, whether you like this episode or season, let us know so we can keep producing more of this content. Otherwise, we hope you'll share your ideas for we're doing icicle pianos again.
Yeah.
So yeah, love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.